Was your flight delayed for more than 3 hours? If yes, you can get up to 600 euros in compensation, no matter how expensive your flight ticket was. Even if the delay was less than 3 hours, you are still entitled to some compensation. I'll share details of exactly how much you can get, how to apply for the compensation, and what to do if the airline doesn't want to pay. We all know how hectic catching a flight can be, especially if you are traveling internationally. Getting to the airport 3 hours before your flight and finding out that your flight has been delayed can be a huge headache. But thankfully, if your flight was delayed by more than 3 hours, you can get compensation under the European law if your flight took off from a European country or your flight landed in an EU member state and the airline was based in Europe. How much compensation can you get? According to the European Court of Justice, the amount of compensation depends on the length of the flight. For short distance flights up to 1500 kilometers, the compensation is 250 euros. For medium distances more than 1500 kilometers within the EU and outside the EU between 1500 and 3500 kilometers, the compensation is 400 euros. For long distance flights over 3500 kilometers with start or destination outside the EU, the compensation is 600 euros. Delayed flights. It's a great feeling when you're all set for a vacation. Bags checked in, just waiting at the gate for the plane. But then the departure gets delayed and you're left in the dark. Instead of flying high, you're stuck on the ground for hours getting frustrated. But here's some good news. If your flight is delayed beyond a certain number of hours, you are entitled to compensation. Mostly airlines don't reach out to settle your claim when there is a delay. In fact, some even try to avoid their legal responsibility. So you may have to take action. Don't let anyone tell you that you're not eligible for compensation, no matter if it's a cheap flight or part of a package holiday. What really matters is the time you lose, and the airline must be at fault. Your right for compensation kicks in for a delay of 3 hours. However, if it's a 2 hours delay, airlines have other ways to assist you, which I'll explain later on in the video. What does the 3-hour delay actually mean? Well, it's not about when the plane takes off, but when it lands. When they open the airplane door after landing, that's the exact moment that counts. If you're more than 3 hours late at that point, you qualify for compensation for flight delays. The best thing about it is that you do not have to have taken the delayed flight in order to get this compensation. Even if you decided not to take the flight due to the delay, you can still claim the compensation. But to get the compensation for a flight delay, you need to meet one more important deadline. Make sure you checked in at least 2 hours before your original departure time. But watch out, because some airlines and airports might have different rules, so it's best to check with them directly. Missed connections. Missing connecting flights can be quite tricky, but here's the deal. If you miss your next flight because of a delay of less than 3 hours and it makes you arrive more than 3 hours late at your destination, you can also get some compensation. Even if your connecting flight was outside of Europe, this rule still applies. Just remember, you should have booked both of the flights together. Even if your flight was a while back, you can still make your claim. In Germany, your claims only expire after the 3-year limitation period at the end of the calendar year. Please hit the like button if you're getting value from this video and consider subscribing. Smaller delays. What if your flight is delayed by 2 or 2.5 hours and you're stuck at the airport with nothing to do? Chances are you'll start feeling hungry and thirsty. Here's the deal. After 120 minutes of delay, the airline responsible for your flight has to give you food and drinks. Plus, your rights during a flight delay include the chance to make 2 phone calls or send a couple of emails. You'll want to let people know about the delays so that they aren't left waiting for you. But there's a crucial condition for your passenger rights to apply in full. Your flight must be related to the EU, meeting at least one of these 3 criteria. The flight takes place within Europe, starts in the Europe and ends in a third country, or starts in a third country, lands in EU, and the airline is also based in EU. What to do if there is a delay? So if you're facing a long flight delay, what should you do at the airport to get your compensation? You'll want some solid proof when you ask for your money back. Here is a plan to follow. First, make sure that you get a written confirmation of the delay, preferably with a reason from the airline. If they don't give you a reason, don't worry, it's most likely their fault. Save all your receipts to show what you spent. Did you buy food, drinks, or have to get a taxi or a stay in a hotel during your delay? You'll need all of the receipts to get a refund. Get contact info from some fellow travelers so you have some reliable witnesses if needed. Others can also use your contact info for their claims. Exceptional circumstances. All things considered, you won't get compensation if the airline isn't to blame for the delay. This happens when the delay is caused by unusual events that the airline cannot control and that aren't part of regular flight operations. The most common exceptional circumstance is the weather. Really harsh weather like heavy rain, storms, or snow can be considered unusual situations. But airlines might just say it was the bad weather and they couldn't do much about it. The bad weather has to be linked with your specific flight. For example, if there was a big storm that caused delays in the whole country days before your flight, it might not count as unusual circumstances anymore. The airline has to show in court that your flight was delayed because of rare weather conditions. Some other exceptional circumstances include airport closure, terror threat, air traffic control problem, and strike. However, technical defects, illness of crew, and damage to the aircraft by third parties may not be exceptional circumstances. In any case, it's better to contact the airline and submit your request for compensation. How to apply for flight delay compensation? Well, there's no standard form that you can submit for the delay compensation. However, most airlines have a compensation application form on their website. For example, here is how Lufthansa's form looks like. You can fill in the details and submit your complaint completely online. If the airline doesn't have a compensation section on their website, you can also submit a custom letter of your own. Make sure to add all of these details. I'll put a link to where you can download this sample letter below the like button. What if the airline doesn't want to pay? If the airline refuses to pay or doesn't reply to your claim within 2 months, it's time to seek help. There are various ways to ensure that you get what you're owed. Arbitration Board. If the airline has said no to your request to the Public Transport Arbitration Board SOP without any cost, you can send your arbitration request over the internet. But first, you need to give the airline a chance to fix things on their own. The SOP will give a suggestion for arbitration. But remember, it's not something that the airline has to follow. If you're traveling for business, this option doesn't work for you. Also, you have to wait 2 months for the airline to reply before you can talk to the SOP. Immediate compensation. If you'd rather not hassle with the airline, you can reach out to a quick compensation service. These are companies that give you your money right away but keep around 33 to 35% of it for their services. They'll offer to help if your case has a good chance of winning. But if it doesn't, you won't get an offer. I'll link some of these services in the description below. As I mentioned earlier, if your flight is late, the airline has a responsibility to look after you according to Article 9 of the Air Passenger Rights Regulation. This means they should provide you with care services like free food and drinks depending on how long you have to wait. For example, if you are stuck at the airport for half a day, they should give you a proper meal. If the airline doesn't offer you anything, you can buy food and drinks yourself and then ask for a refund. If your flight is delayed until the next day, the airline has to arrange a hotel for you to stay in as well as transport to and from the airport. If you end up having to book a hotel room, or if you pay for a bus, taxi, or a rental car to get to the hotel because the airline doesn't help you, you can ask the airline to pay you back for these expenses. This is because the airline didn't do what they were supposed to do in taking care of you according to the law. Make sure to save all your receipts. You can ask for a refund of these costs in addition to the compensation you are entitled to. Rights as a passenger in Europe isn't the only thing. You must also know your rights as an employee in Germany, which I discuss in this video. So thanks for watching, bleib gesund, and I'll see you in this video.